The concept of a harem, a group of women who are secluded from the outside world and serve the sexual and domestic needs of a wealthy man, is a common feature in many cultures. In China, the practice of maintaining a harem was most prevalent among the emperors of various dynasties. The lives of the women in the harem and their interactions with the emperor offer a glimpse into the complex and varied world of the imperial court. It is important to note that the practices and behaviors of Chinese emperors and their harems varied widely across different dynasties and emperors. However, there are some documented instances of amusements that were indulged in by certain emperors and their harems. During the Tang dynasty, some emperors would have their concubines perform musical and dance performances for their personal entertainment. This was often done in private settings, such as in the imperial gardens or within the palace walls. Some emperors, such as Emperor Huizong of the Song dynasty, enjoyed playing games with their concubines, such as guessing games and riddle games. These games were meant to be intellectually stimulating and entertaining for both the emperor and the concubines. However, there were also instances of more risque activities taking place in the harems. For example, during the Ming dynasty, some emperors were known to engage in sexual activities with their concubines in public settings, such as in front of other members of the court. These activities were seen as a display of the emperor's power and sexual prowess. It is important to note, however, that many of these practices were not universally accepted or condoned by society, and were often viewed as immoral or inappropriate. Furthermore, not all emperors engaged in these types of behaviors, and many were known to treat their concubines with respect and dignity. The harems were also often sites of artistic and cultural pursuits. During the Qing dynasty, some emperors had their concubines learn calligraphy, painting, and poetry. Some emperors also enjoyed playing board games with their concubines, such as chess and go. These games were seen as intellectual exercises and were often used to test the mental abilities of the concubines. In addition to these activities, some emperors indulged in luxurious and extravagant hobbies within their harems. For example, Emperor Qianlong of the Qing dynasty was known for his collection of jade and other precious stones, which he often displayed to his concubines. He also had a passion for gardening and would often spend time in the imperial gardens with his concubines. However, the harems were also often sites of political maneuvering and competition among the women vying for the emperor's favor. Some concubines were able to use their influence to gain power and influence within the court, while others were relegated to lives of obscurity and neglect. The women in the harems were largely confined to the palace and had limited opportunities for education, socialization, and personal freedom. Another notable amusement in the harems was the practice of foot binding. This was a practice that originated in the Song dynasty and involved binding the feet of young girls to prevent them from growing beyond a certain size. The practice was seen as a sign of beauty and elegance, and it was often encouraged by the emperors and the women in their harems. However, it caused lifelong physical deformities and health problems for the women who underwent it. Another activity that emperors in their harems indulged in was the use of aphrodisiacs. The use of aphrodisiacs was not limited to the harems, but was also prevalent in other parts of Chinese society. However, the use of these substances was often associated with the upper class and was seen as a way to display wealth and status. Despite the negative aspects of the harems, it's worth noting that they also provided some women with opportunities that they might not have had otherwise. For example, some women in the harems were able to develop their artistic talents and pursue their interests in literature, calligraphy, and music. Others were able to use their influence to gain power and influence within the court, and some were even able to become empress. However, for most women in the harems, life was difficult and restrictive. They were largely cut off from the outside world and had limited opportunities for personal growth or development. They were subject to strict rules and regulations and were often treated as objects rather than as human beings. Overall, the practices and behaviors of Chinese emperors and their harems were complex and varied. While some emperors treated their concubines with respect and dignity, others engaged in exploitative and even abusive behavior. The harems were also sites of political maneuvering and competition, and women in the harems were often used as pawns in power struggles between rival factions within the court. Today, the harems of ancient China serve as a reminder of the ways in which power and privilege can be abused and exploited, and of the importance of working towards greater equality and justice for all people. While we can learn much from the history of the harems, it's important to recognize that their legacy is a complicated one, and that we must approach this history with nuance and empathy. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more dark historical videos.